Okay. Okay, now the one thing that I think it's very important is that tonight, as we have the lecture, there's an individual by the name of Julian Castro, which is the mayor of San Antonio. And it is the first Hispanic ever to be a keynote speaker in a convention. So, as you know, the convention is going on right now, and it started this Tuesday, and it's going to go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, just like the Republican Party did last week. And I think it's extremely important that you get to appreciate that. I'm sure they're going to repeat this thing. Julian Castro's mother was a very, very, very important activist in Texas. And the reason why I mentioned Texas is because we are going to be talking about Texas. And I just think that this is very perfect because it only happens once. And once means once. We're not going to have a Democratic convention in the spring or next fall or next summer, or, you know, we don't get to see this, you know, for the next 4 years, whether President Obama makes it in November or he does not. But I think it's extremely important that that we take a note of that, because in fact, one of the things that I would like you to mention is precisely this man, Julian Castro, and what it has taken in the history of the United States. Think about that, for all the conventions that and political parties, Democratic and Republican parties' conventions throughout the many years of history and political history in the United States. Now we're looking at, you know, not necessarily the first Hispanic mayor, because there has been a few already, which is, I think, exciting. But perhaps the predecessor to Julian Castro has been another, other Hispanos, and I think that Texas is very interesting because this is a name that I think it's quite important. Cisneros was actually the very first mayor of San Antonio, which was Hispanic. This guy carried 90% of the vote, okay? And I want you to think about that, because when someone gets that much, when someone is that much popular in any city to become a mayor or governor, or why not, the one thing that I think it's very important here to appreciate is, the very fact that in order to make it as a politician anywhere in Texas or anywhere in San Antonio or anywhere in Dallas or any one of the bigger cities, or you can look at the whole southwest of the United States, one of the things that I think it's key is that any mayor, regardless of any city, it's going to need the white vote too. It's going to need the Asian vote too. It's going to need the black vote too, and et cetera, et cetera. So when Hispanos run for power, even in places where there's not a whole lot of Hispanos, well, it is the responsibility of the voters to vote for the best person, to attain power. Now, I would say that, we certainly have a mayor in the city of Los Angeles, Antonio Villarraigosa, and he happens to be the Democratic Party chairman. Now, that is another interesting factor, because, no, there has never been one, there are quite a lot of very big politicians in the city of LA and in California that are representing the Democratic Party in the convention, and I want to make sure that that this is understood and it's through and through. This is significant because again, there has never been a keynote or a Democratic Party chairman, and then this makes the point that Hispanic politicians are on the growth, and they are representing Americans. Okay, it's not like this little town has all these Hispanics that are going to vote for the Hispanic person anyways. But that's not the case. Okay, now if Villaraigosa has his eye on higher office, say governorship or why not, well, then he's going to need more than just the Hispanic vote in order to win. Now, the Hispanic vote is very important. Okay, let's talk about that. I believe that it's not necessarily a very large percent of the population of Hispanic populations that votes. I think that it's still very important that Hispanics continue on striving to recruit more people and more and to recruit more Hispanics to get to the vote, because I think through this, Hispanics can get a little bit more of a political power. This did not happen in the 60s or in the 70s, and Hispanics were denied the vote. They were denied. They even were denied basic rights, such as to be buried in their own cemeteries of their towns and cities, as it was the case of Mr. Longoria, who was a World War II hero, came from the Japanese front in the Pacific, and when he came back home, and he was among many heroes with many condecorations. He was not allowed to be buried in his own town in Texas, simply because he was an Hispanic, and the white folks were not going to like it. It was then a politician, which is a congressman by the name of Lyndon Johnson, who became vice president and who became president after John F. Kennedy was assassinated, that interceded for Mr. Longoria and allowed Mr. Longoria to be buried in Arlington National Cemetery. So I think this is extremely important. That we look, that we understand, and we appreciate the fact that in the United States there has been now a more of a political triforce to make sure that all of us get to participate in the world of politics. In this case, I think the keynote speaker, Julian Castro, mayor of San Antonio, is certainly making a bigger stride for all of us to have perhaps that hope that someday all of us should be more participatory in the electoral process in the United States of America. Okay, now I just want to make sure that we look at the legacy of hate and the conquest of Mexico's Northwest. When you read the book, I think that it's very important that you look at those dates. If you look at the title of the book, or in Chapter 1, Legacy of Hate and the Conquest of Mexico's Northwest, one of the things, and ask and participate. Okay, and the way you did that last time, like Katrina and Rose and Dustin, the way you guys did that last time was to either write some comments, which is participation 100%, or questions. Okay, there's no reason why not to have the questions, or why not. Okay, so very important that that you're part of the scheme here. Okay, so with that being said, one of the things that it is extremely important that we look at first of all the invasion of Texas. What happened here? Okay. And one of the things that we know is that, one of the things that we know, and we're going to have a little video in a few, okay, one of the things that we know is that, well, Texas was invaded in the United States. The concept of taking over, has always been full of hostility. If you look at how small the United States was in the good old days of 1776, which was the 13 first colonies, but then amazingly, it goes from shining, from sea to shining sea. One of these concepts for the expansion, actually, it's called, and we're gonna see this term again. Okay, it's called manifest destiny. And manifest destiny basically is just this concept that God is telling me to expand. I'm expanding. I'm going to take people's land because I'm spreading the word of God, and it is sacred. Well, what about if there is resistance? And as a matter of fact, some people even may go to physical violence to defend what's theirs because they don't necessarily think that what you're doing is correct. It doesn't matter if it's a call of God. It's got to be a two-lane freeway. Well, guess what? When you're looking at a call of God, then you're looking at the lack of land that dissipates, that no longer exists in the 13 first colonies, and that forces the expansion to the west. Oregon Trail in the north, Midwest up all the way to the west coast, and of course you look at the whole southwest of the United States, which basically comprises Arizona and New Mexico, Nueva Mexico. Arizona then was called Sonora, and then you have parts of Colorado, parts of Nevada, parts of Utah, and then of course Texas, and then the state of California. So it's there now to look at it's there now to look at this call of God, and because of it's a call of God, then we can basically assume that if tragedies occur in the process of getting someone's land, these tragedies that occur in that process then can be forgiven by higher divinity or a higher thought or a higher spirituality. Also, this call of God is going to bring the real God to these people that are otherwise are just not, that are wrong. And so, regardless to what their gods may have been, particularly Native American nations. And you got to remember that before Texas became part of the United States and the rest of the Southwest, well, the natives that lived there, Apache, Sioux, Pueblo, were Mexican natives because they lived in the territory of Mexico. But again, Mexico was just solely named by the Spaniards when the Spaniards sort of discovered, and in my view, Spaniards did not discover anything. They were discovered. Because they were the comers, to the Americas, okay. And by the way, discoveries, while I'm at it, are mutual. Okay, it's like being in love with somebody. Well, it's mutual love. Okay, it's no such like, well, love this person and just love this person because that person is really cool, and oh wow, but the person doesn't love me, so, but it's okay, as long as no, all right? These things have to be mutual, and that's the nature of discoveries in this world. So, as you can tell, when you're looking at first of all the background of the invasion of Texas and the broken promises between the events that had occurred between the United States and and what the United States was trying to create, the Tejanos were trying to create in Texas when they crossed the border to Mexico, okay, established a situation in which Mexicans could not control, and it generated in violence, and it generated in an invasion. And this was, and they were pretexts and myths and El Alamo and the defense of a Mexican homeland, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to show you quite a lot of interesting things here because I think it's important that you understand what this invasion was all about. Now remember, we have the tendency to call it the Mexican-American War, and it is actually in the books as Mexican-American War. But you better forget about Mexican-American War, because for Mexicans this was the invasion of Texas, and therefore the invasion of the sovereignty of Mexico. Yes? Okay, very important. Okay, because the way Mexico saw this, the colonists, incoming colonists such as Sam Houston, Austin, Dallas, and etc. coming to Mexico. Okay, they saw it as an invasion. And now this also brings me the concept of illegal, alien. Well, now we can just clearly say now that really the first illegal aliens in the U.S. were Americans, because we're Americans that had crossed to Mexico and Texas illegally, okay, and then they were asked to leave. And these Tejanos then did not, okay? Therefore, Mexico, in all decided that they needed to protect their sovereignty, and since these Tejanos did not leave, then that created the situation in which General Santa Anna and and his wealth brought thousands of Mexican troops. A lot of them really not professional armies, but it was just a Holocaust going from all the way from from Mexico all the way to El Alamo, to Texas, to San Antonio, where this mayor is. Okay. And there's the Mexican conflict with El Alamo. Very important that in El Alamo there were of course Tejanos, which are Mexicans there from Texas. Besides David Crockett and Bowie and all those guys. I would not necessarily call those guys heroes. Okay, because I would not call them heroes, because they were not. They were just here for the land of opportunity. They had no business being in Texas other than their own particular wealth, their own particular gain. So the premises of land, of actually going somewhere else and then begin to take someone's land so that I'm going to make it mine, is exactly that. Okay, land. And so last week, when we saw Quest for a Homeland, and rightfully so, when we saw Quest of a Homeland, then you have now Mexicans who are now live in the places where they used to live, but as peons, as homeless. They don't have any place. They are foreigners in a foreign land, because because the land that they used to know, which to them it was sacrosanct, because their families, their grandparents, their parents were buried there, and their grandparents were buried there, and the great-grandparents were buried there, and then this was inherited to make it productive for the next family, etc., etc. Mexicans were self-sufficient, and they were extremely, well versatile in the management of land and cattle, and hunting and fishing, and etc. So Mexicans were not just people that happened to be there, exploiting or being exploited. Okay. When they lost their land, that's exactly what they became. They definitely, Mexicans in Texas particularly, became second-class citizens, not even citizens actually, because then there was the famous Guadalupe Hidalgo Treaty that we're going to talk in a few as well, and then there was the sense of loss. One of the things I think that it's important here to mention is El Alamo, because as we know, Santana was there asking for surrender. They didn't. So he went ahead and just took them all out, took him down. Now the history of El Alamo is a very different history when we look at it. First of all, because we used that story to make a lot of Hollywood movies in which all our big-time heroes like John Wayne and in a later one, later in the history of El Alamo, we have even more important actors of the new El Alamo movie that was made. Okay, basically the story is remember the Alamo, because we portrayed these heroes in El Alamo, and then after we know that Mexico has wiped them out, then what we say here is under the remember the Alamo, Houston's troops go find all the Mexicans that they can, defeat Santa Anna, but with the remember of El Alamo, it's just payback. And payback means we're gonna take you. And when Santana was arrested by Sam Houston basically did not put him on a fire squad or kill him, as he probably should if he thought that there were excesses by the Mexican army to massacre the people in the Alamo. But the main thing here was, of course, the deals that Houston could cut, and the one thing that he wanted from Santa Anna is to just sign him a paper giving him over the state of Texas to him and basically to the Americans, and then in addition, he was paid off $12 million that the Mexicans never got to see. So I think about that, because the whole territory of Texas was basically sold, and money was paid to one man. And then because we seem to do this right in the United States, right? We invade, we destroy, we take over, we uproot people, kick them out of their land and all that stuff. And then we just have this tendency to say, well, we did this kind of damage, but let's pay them. And we pay Mexicans $12 million, and then I guess we bought the state of Texas. We did time and time again. In modern days, we do this, in warfare. Iraq, we destroyed, we invaded, we bombed it, we did all kinds of things, and now we are in the process of rebuilding it. Okay, so I think that that's very important that that we keep that in mind, because the United States has consistently done that through ever since government officials or the incoming conquerors negotiated deals with Native Americans. and the whole thing was to gain their land and their possessions, because land equals to money. Okay, so the pretext and the myth of the Alamo was, well, since these Mexicans massacred us, let's go after them. And after them we went all the way to the city of Mexico, and then there were just a bunch of battles going. And then one of the things that you ended up reading, of course, was the invasion to Mexico, in which we got this this pretext for the conquest. Okay, I think that I think it's fair to mention that this guy was the President of the United States, Pope, and he just had no other qualms in his life other than take over land. He used Mexico, and he found excuses left and right to be able to take on the Mexicans in one way or the other. And then actually, the war with Mexico started way before the Alamo, way before this. It actually started in Rio Nueces, in a place called Rio Nueces and Rio Grande, which is a territory that happens to be in the Gulf of Mexico, in which there were scrimmages between the U.S. Army and Mexicans. Okay, and he provoked Mexicans. There was just a little bit of shooting here and there, and then he was able to convince Congress that Mexico, in fact, had invaded the United States, and Mexico was just defending themselves in their own territory, but he used that as a pretext for the war. Okay, Polk had no qualms at all to expand. He was even criticized by one of the greatest men in the history of the United States, which was Abraham Lincoln, when he was a congressman, and he wanted to know what exactly is that we were doing in terms of a war. He questioned the war because Congress declares wars, and this was not happening. And then Lincoln also questioned the validity of war and why invading Mexico and why doing all these things. Okay, but Polk was extremely ambitious, and then as far as he was concerned, he could have even taken the whole country of Mexico. Rather, he was sort of stopped by the person who signed the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo by the name of Trish, and big name, okay, who is ultimately the person that signed off this Guadalupe Hidalgo Treaty, which was a treaty that would put the end of the conflict between the United States and Texas, and Mexico signing away in exchange of peace, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo in the city of Guadalupe Hidalgo, nearby Mexico, in which then we stop all matters of and all grievances between both countries stop. Okay, so I gave you a rundown, usually in a lecture in which we establish we establish basically all these different concepts that you read. There's quite a lot of interesting things to be mentioned about, for example, the Mexicanas on the front lines. By the way, it's not only Mexicanas that fought in the war defending their own territory, but actually a whole Irish squadron called the Patricios. And I'm going to try to see if I can find it for you, because there's some really beautiful music of the Patricios, which is an Irish regiment, comprised entirely by Irish people or Irish citizens, but they just newly arrived Irish citizens from Ireland in the United States. Well, they are put in the regiment, and then they're sent to Mexico so they could invade Mexico, and they realize that this is wrong, because they were already being invaded by Great Britain in Northern Ireland, and when they come to Mexico, they begin to think that the government, the United States government, is making them do the same, okay, the same as what the British did to them. and therefore they rebelled. They actually joined the Mexican army, and eventually they are prosecuted, perhaps killed, perhaps taken away, or put to firing squads, or accused of treason, put to jail, and that was the end of it. Okay, so I think that's so there's a lot more into that particular war as we could think. Now, what is important here is the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Okay. Now, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is the treaty that was signed after the war, and there were various provisions in there. Okay. And one of the homeworks that I have to tell you, okay, one of the things that you need to always be aware of here is the fact that when we talked about the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, okay, we talked about a treaty that was signed, by both countries, the United States of Mexico, to end of the war, and this treaty has about 18 articles. 18 articles meaning 18 parts, okay? They call it paragraphs, whatever. If you're going to sign a treaty, you're going to sign a treaty. You're going to sign a treaty that has quite a lot of stuff in there. So the treaty is not in the book in any way or form, but what's in the book on page 13, the new book that is what was the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo and what exactly gives you the description, okay? And then there's some controversies in there, but controversies or not, okay, the treaty was not fair to Mexicans, because it was not, okay? First of all, it was ratified in Congress, but anything that was signed in the treaty, it just never happened. Things did not happen. The whole idea was that Mexicans that lived under the invaded territories, for example, Tejanos or Sonoreños or Californios, etc., they were to be protected by the treaty, and the treaty would say specifically that they could keep their land. So if you were Mexican, that you lived in Texas, but now Texas is the United States, you keep your land. Well, the biggest tragedy about the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is that there were no items that protected Indians or natives. Therefore, natives were not protected by the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Well, one could say, yeah, but what does that have to do with Mexicans? Well, color of the skin. It created problems because then the newcomers would look at someone and says, okay, I'm going to take your land because I'm just going to simply take it, and that's called land grabbing. Okay? So if I'm just going to grab your land, I'm just going to do it. Okay? And if you complain, then you have a problem because I'm either going to kill you, or I'm going to wipe your whole family, or I'm going to do more nasty things to you. But the fact is that it's just not going to be nice. Okay? And I'm going to make it very difficult for you. So when there is violence and killing, the Mexicans had zero protection because the law was coming, but also within the treaty they were not really protected because they could easily, settlers could just simply say that, well, we're dealing with Indians, and there's nothing about Indians that they get to have their land, even though that it was vastly assumed that Indians already were relegated to, we call that Indian reservations, and they were already going through this very painful relocation where spiritually the land was God. Okay, for Mexicans it was just the same thing, but for the newcomers, land meant business. And it meant business, so anything we can grab, anything we can get from Mexicans, so be it. So anything that we can take from Mexicans that allowed us that allow us, that allow us more power to us, then we'll take. But but anything that is going to be anything that has to do with your cultura, then we don't need to worry about it. Okay. So in a nutshell, the book ends on the chapter 1 ends with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Okay, there is really sad conclusions and notes that you have to look in there, and then there's going to be some discussions. Well, one of the things that you need to do is, first of all, you need to, and then I'll show you in the next few minutes, is that you need to find, read, and read the treaty. Okay, and that's in the internet, and I'm going to show you some tricks as to how you can do that. And then you must choose one article and argue and make comments and use resources. This means that this is going to be report number 2, which is called the Hidalgo Treaty Report. So, oh, thank you very much, Rosa. Yeah, the treaty is on page 51 for students with a blue book. That is correct, because, yes, if you have the blue book, then thank you very much, Rosa. That was very sweet. Okay. All right, so give me just a couple of seconds, because I have some really cool stuff for you. Okay, and that I think you're going to, you're going to appreciate, what some of this stuff has meant, because the loss of land, has an extreme, change, radical change of the life of Mexicans. That will take, that will just create, an extraordinary change of culture, civilization, and strife in today. Okay, so. So, Dustin, the paper is not going to be due for a while, well, for a short while. I will be sending you an email, or actually an announcement via Talonnet as to when this is going to be due. So expect, expect an announcement shortly, and then it's probably going to be, it's going to be in, it's going to be. It's going to be due probably within a couple of weeks, and the reading is called. What is the reading called? Okay, it's called the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and I will try to find it in there. Okay. All right, so the treaty, well, first of all, I would expect that you read chapter 1. I'm going to be assigning chapter 2, because I think that's very important. Called it Freedom in the Cage in the Colonization of Mexico. But I will be assigning some stuff, the research you have to do to find the treaty. Okay. All right. So pretty cool now. Take a couple of minutes. Let me set a couple of things for you, and then we're gonna be able to see just a couple of things here in a minute. Okay. Give me a second, please. Okay, what I need you to do is I want you to tell me if you can see this. Okay, and you probably can. Thank you very much, Dustin. I know that you could. Thank you very much, Rosa, because I know it is. Okay, well, let's take a look at this for a minute. And this comes from, I'll show you first. I'm just going to take that, and I'm going to send that to you. Okay, and that would be return. And you just have in front of you the link of the Treaty of the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Okay. Your job, and again, for Dustin and Caroline and Rosa, I will be telling you, I will be sending you, a little bit more hints. I'm going to send you a sample paper about the Guadalupe Hidalgo Treaty, exactly what we want in here. But the treaty is very important because you need to actually read the treaty, okay, and then see what it entitled. It starts with, of course, Treaty of Peace, Friendship, Limits, and Settlement, etc., etc., and it starts right where I'm pointing at you there, which I'm highlighting, okay, and that's the first paragraph that you see in the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, okay, in the United States of America and the United Mexican States, animated by a sincere desire to put an end, etc., etc., and that's where it starts. You're going to start like right from the get-go. You're going to be thinking, oh my God, what is this about friendship and peace and all that stuff, when we know that Mexico has been an angry neighbor ever since? Well, your job is read every one of these articles. You need to just actually skim through, because you need to actually zero in one of these articles, okay, and then you need to just make comments about one of the articles, or you need to write about it, okay? So pick an article. You cannot make a paper out of the whole treaty unless you're going to write, a 200-page paper, okay? The treaty itself is going to be, if you download this and you print it, or why not, it's going to be, 12 pages or something, so you know that it's going to be a fairly large document. But you also have the controversy on page 13 in the new book, and probably 51 or 52 in the old book, in the blue book, about the controversy, okay? It talks about Articles 8, 9, 10, Article 11, okay? However, there's quite a lot of deception, and there's quite a lot of points and items in the treaty that never happened, and they, where were the protections? For example, the treaty establishes that that the Spanish language is going to be let alone by the treaty that we signed. That is pretty much the official language. Well, in California and in many states, we made it illegal. We made it illegal to even be Mexican. Exaggerating, maybe taking a little bit of how Mexicans are treated in the state of Arizona. It's just pathetic, okay, for example. And we're going to look at some of those documents, and I'm going to be, sharing some of this stuff in here, so you really know how things have changed, in which if you read the treaty and then we act upon against Mexicans or Mexican Americans living in the United States, we are going to be doing the wrong thing, and and somewhere along the line we're just missing something here, because if we sign a treaty with someone, why is it that we need to change it? But the fact is that Mexicans were never respected, ever, even after we signed a treaty in which the assumption was to protect them, to protect Mexicans now living in the new territory, in the brand new United States. And in addition of Mexicans not being protected, is that we are taking their land completely and totally away. So it becomes a land war. So no matter how many treaties this country signed with Mexico, it really didn't matter at the end of the day, because the fact is that we need to get that land. Everything that is there in the new territories is going to be ours. So what about the people that own it there? Well, nothing we can do for them in any way or form. Okay. Okay. So being said that, I think that it's pretty much left up to maybe good people with goodwill, Americans or Mexicans or why not, to try to establish some sort of a relation in which they could protect their integrity a little bit. Then there's all kinds of other things in the social spectrum that happened with the invasion of Texas and the takeover and then the expansion to the Southwest, like marriages between white and Mexican, the señoritas, the very rich ladies that married, these white newcomers, Mexicans, thinking that, well, if that happens, perhaps we can give la dote, which is the dowry of the bride, to whoever marries our daughter, because this is just going to be very Mexican. Well, at the end of the day, that too cost Mexicans the loss of their land, and eventually, basically driving in absolute poverty, so that by 1968, or by the end of the, or by the 60s anyway, okay. More or less, you got about 1/3 of Mexicans living in the utmost poverty, with no education, no shoes, no food, no nothing. And this was here in the United States of America. Looked like perhaps one of those African countries in which there is so much famine and suffering. But that's exactly what Mexicans were finally driven to. And in terms of acquiring their education or participating in the American process, well, that took a few more years, more like 40, in which finally Mexicans begin to take some particular strides, towards civil rights. Okay, so I'm going to just one of the things in which one of the greatest poets that United States gave birth to is Corky Gonzalez. Okay. And Corky Gonzalez was, one of the greatest and most astute politicians out of Denver, Colorado. And he was quite a lot of poet. He was a great poet, and he had the ability to let the masses talk for themselves. Okay, because it was very important that this took, that this could take place. And he was a great orator, a great speaker, and then this really helped to raise the consciousness of Mexicans living in a disarray in the 20th century. Okay, he is also the author of Joaquin, which is I Am Joaquin, which basically talks about the Joaquin in all of us. So give me just a couple of minutes in there, and I will be able to do something here to see if I can bring that up to you. Oh, Jesus. Okay, I am having a little bit of a technical issue right now, but I will try to send you a little quick fix here. I'm going to try to send you the link, and I'm just going to have you watch this in your own time. And it's part 1 and part 2, and I don't know what's going on at this point. Already did that. Okay. The address field and okay. Okay, so what I'm going to ask you to do is, for some reason, there's just a little bit of a technical issue here that I cannot figure out, and so what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you a link for Yo Soy Joaquin. Okay, and I'm going to ask you to, just open that in YouTube, and it's where we were watching, but for some reason the sound was gone, and we just could no longer see it. So, so I don't know what the issue is here, but anyway, at any rate. So we're going to make sure that that you watch that, and I'm going to try to see if I could solve this, next time, and we can just actually see the whole poem of Yo Soy Joaquin, which is really cool. And basically, it depicts Corky Gonzalez feels about what the end of what Mexicans ended up being. Basically thrown in the gutter, and his his preoccupation about what had gone wrong with the taking over and the land grabbing and the sense of loss of identity and being lost in nowhere, in the middle of nowhere. So I'm just going to make sure that we look at the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and then in addition to the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, you want to follow this link of of Yo Soy Joaquin, and then make some comparisons and contrasts and arguments about what the treaty had created to Mexicans, and then what had actually happened in Texas, and then why is and what that has prompted to further movement of to the west for New Mexico, Arizona, and California, and what were the more what were the higher implications as the move to go west entitles. One of the things that I think is very important is that as you look at the chapter of Freedom in a Cage, which was the colonization of New Mexico, you look at very carefully the famous wheel, which is a wheel that revolves around an economic hub, which is the axis for the other variables. This particular wheel is very important because you're always going to see economics in the center, and then you're going to say what really controls economics, which is socialization, and of course a conquest, and of course a resistance, and then political control. This is very important because this little concept is going to take us further into analyzing that all conquests happen to be political and happen to be economical. Okay, why would I ever take my neighbor's house? I mean, why would I ever do that? And the reason is very simple. I will do that because I need to I need to get his house because I'm gonna rent it, sell it, or level it and build something else, and I don't care about his family, for example. Okay. So that's what it's very important when we study the history of conquering. When we take this idea of taking our civilization somewhere else, and if you start thinking about the British going all over the world and conquering China, and the French conquering Africa, and the Dutch conquering South Africa. Well, why did they do this? Okay, one could say is, well, maybe out of necessity because there's no more land left. Well, then it proves true the fact that if there's no more land left, well, let's go get somebody else's land, okay, because there's nothing else we can get here. So I think that that's very important, and I hope that you're getting the gist of it. And it's understood what this concept of land happens to be. It's just going to constantly mark forever the idea that Mexicans could ever own land or be part of the American experience in terms of economics. Okay, it won't happen ever again, and it would take a long time, clear to 1950, when in fact Mexicans were ever able to get anything in terms of acquiring property again. I want you to tell me if you can actually see this now, because it seems like I took care a little bit of the problem. And I'm going to move it a little bit forward. Thank you, Caroline. I really appreciate that. Yes, thank you very much, Dustin. When it didn't work before, I know you were seeing that, but it wasn't, Anyway, I'm just gonna cut myself off, and I'm just going to make sure that you look at this. Thank you. Thank you so much, Katrina. Okay, can you all hear me now? I'm sure you can. So I'm just going to, basically I'm going to go over, what's homework Katrina had actually asked me. And then, yes, I'm going to be sending you an email, and I'm going to be sending you some directions about the next paper, the next report that you need to do, which is the 3D report. This one has to be a very good report because it has to have some resources. There's a lot of stuff that you got out of the archives, which is today, and then also the reading of chapter 1, also the reading of the treaty, and you need to, download, a reading version. You need to pick um, an article of the treaty and discuss it. So that's very important. And then you also need to look at Yo Soy Joaquin to put more beef, give it a little bit of a punch to your report treaty, because if you analyze Joaquin, if you make a good analysis of Yo Soy Joaquin, you will generate very good ideas for your report. In which ways Joaquin is the reality after the loss of land, life, culture, civilization took place after the after the Mexican-American conflict. Do you have any questions, Justin? I know you're typing there, so maybe you want to see if you can do, see if I can read what you're doing. And again, you're going to be receiving an announcement from me, in the next day or so, and then we'll be able to, and then we're going to be able to discuss further. And you can send me emails if you have any kind of questions on what the second report is. But I think you really have, good stuff already to be talking about. Questions, anybody? Any other questions, anybody? Well, Katrina, all the reports are usually a couple of pages. Okay, that's what you need to write. But you got to remember that if you put your 2 pages in there, well, one thing is how much you're going to write and the quality of the paper. So the most important thing is this. Okay, and that's what I'm going to be looking for. Okay. So if you write 2 pages on the report, I expect high-end quality on that paper. So if you want to write, a little bit more on that or something, you just need to read the book, and you also need to be looking at the Yo Soy Joaquin and the treaty, and then you're going to be able to figure that out there. In addition, I'm also sending you a sample report, and I'm going to give you a grade on my sample report. That should really give you a good idea. Okay? And yes, Lisa, everything you do, you turn it in. Okay? All your papers will be turned in. Absolutely. If you turn anything via email or attachment files on the email, I won't even look at it. So be very careful with this, okay? The answer is yes, comma, yes. Okay? All right? Never send a report unless it is turned in. Okay? All right. Okay, cool. So, well, hope you enjoyed the lectures today. And for some reason, I got just a few technical issues. I do apologize.
but this is going to be archived as usual, and you know, you can just pick and choose from there. There were a few comments today. There's lots of talk that I have to do. So, you know, buenas noches a todos. It's Corona time. You might want to just, you know, oh, I also want to make sure that some of you may want to actually cite as examples the mayor of San Antonio, keynote speaker, and you know, some of the political Hispanic contributions today. As you saw, you know, some of you might just analyze a little bit more Julian Castro and his twin brother in politics. Okay, and with that, the lecture is finished, and I hope everybody enjoyed it, and buenas noches a todos, si se puede.